you recommend getting a PS5 Pro, or should I wait till PS6 comes out? I have two PS5s, a Slim and Launch Edition. I was considering a Pro. Love the channel, you keep it real, and the stuff you say about the industry cracks me up every time.
I haven't cried like that since Titanic.
Yeah, honestly, if you already own two PS5s, that Pro becomes a no-brainer. Sell one, add a couple hundred on top, and you are instantly in the best PlayStation experience available right now. The difference is real, especially in first-party exclusives, cleaner image, higher frame rates, better ray tracing, and way smoother performance overall. And let's be real, PS6 is still years away. You would be sitting on your hands missing out on all the upgrades right now for no reason. Plus, with GTA 6 coming, the Pro is 100% going to be the best way to play it on console. Short version, don't wait for the future if you can upgrade your present. Spoil yourself. You already earned it. Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. The latest Black Friday sales data for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro just dropped, and the numbers coming out of Europe are honestly wild. There's a lot to celebrate here, and a few things worth keeping an eye on. So let's run straight through the facts. This Black Friday was a major win for PlayStation across Europe. In the UK alone, PlayStation 5 captured 62% of the total console market share. That means 6 out of every 10 consoles sold during Black Friday were PS5 units. Nintendo Switch 2 held 23%, while Xbox Series consoles accounted for roughly 10%. What makes this even more impressive is that PS5 was the only console platform to grow compared to last year's Black Friday. Sales were up 16% year over year. That suggests demand for the current generation is still extremely strong, especially once meaningful price cuts are applied. After years of rising prices across the industry, the moment discounts finally arrived, consumers responded immediately. In Spain, the results were just as striking. Around 65,000 PS5 consoles were sold in a single week during Black Friday. By comparison, Nintendo Switch 2 sold roughly 30,000 units. Despite Nintendo traditionally performing well in the region, PlayStation clearly dominated this year's holiday sales. A key factor appears to be pricing, with PS5 dropping into the 300 to 350 euro range, combined with its now well-established software catalog. Japan tells a very different story. There, Nintendo Switch 2 remains dominant, moving close to 98,000 units during the same promotional week. PS5, including all models, sold around 36,000 units in total. That is still a solid performance for PlayStation in a traditionally Nintendo-led market. PS5 Pro performance in Japan is particularly interesting. Following a regional price drop to roughly 55,000 yen, sales spiked sharply during the previous week. While the following week slowed slightly, PS5 Pro continues to show strong demand relative to the standard PS5 in certain periods. Across Europe, Nintendo Switch 2 is selling well, but it is not overtaking PlayStation 5. Since its launch in June, the gap between PS5 and Switch 2 has actually widened month after month. In September, PS5 sold nearly double the number of Switch 2 units. In October, PS5 sold roughly 2.5 times more. During Black Friday in November, the PS5 maintained a decisive lead once again. Europe's long-standing PlayStation install base plays a major role here, with close to 30 million PS5 units already in homes across the region. Large digital libraries, PlayStation Plus subscriptions, and established online ecosystems continue to anchor users to the platform. Even with the hybrid appeal of Switch 2, portability alone does not appear to be driving mass switching in Europe at this time. Now to one of the most eye-catching data points of all, PlayStation 5 Pro. In the UK, PS5 Pro recorded its strongest sales week since launch after reaching its lowest price point, yet at approximately £586. In Spain, estimated sales suggest between 12,000 and 15,000 of the 65,000 PS5 units sold during Black Friday were PS5 Pro models. In Japan, more than 15,000 PS5 Pro systems were sold in a single week. That means nearly 1 out of every 4 PS5 consoles sold in parts of Europe during Black Friday were PS5 PS5 Pro units, even at prices still hovering around €650 after discounts. This clearly signals the presence of a sizable premium market willing to pay for higher-end hardware. While PS5 Pro adoption is accelerating, software optimization remains a mixed picture across the industry. Some titles show substantial visual and performance upgrades, while others continue to struggle with early implementations of Sony's PSSR upscaling technology. Multiple games have reported image instability, flickering, or lighting issues linked to current PSSR behavior, leading to questions about consistency across Pro-enhanced releases. All right, this next one is huge for everyone riding with the PS5 Pro. So apparently the upgrade the PS5 Pro is getting in 2026 is not just some tiny patch. This is being described as an enormous leap forward. We're talking PSSR2, Sony's next version of their AI upscaling tech, and according to insiders, it's going to completely change how the Pro handles image quality, memory, and performance. Right now, the PS5 Pro is already doing some wild stuff. Higher resolution, better performance, ray tracing in more games, even upgrades in a bunch of PS4 titles. But let's not pretend it's been perfect. We've seen visual issues in games like Star Wars Outlaws and Silent Hill 2 Remake, shimmering, odd artifacts, stuff that clearly shows the first version of PSSR still has some growing pains. That's where PSSR2 comes in. According to Moore's Law is Dead, this new version is part of Sony and AMD's shared tech stack called Project Amethyst. This is the same foundation that's going to shape the next PlayStation generation too. Inside that project sits this new algorithm called Multi-Frame Super Resolution 2, which is the real name behind PSSR2. And what it does is kind of insane. First, it dramatically reduces how much data the GPU needs to move around for upscaling. That means lower memory usage. Huge win. Second, it speeds up GPU processing times. Another huge win. And on top of all that, it actually improves image quality beyond what PSSR already does today. Better clarity, cleaner edges, less noise, less shimmer. The insider straight up calls the improvement enormous. The comparison they're using is the jump from FSR3 to FSR4. If that holds true, this is not a small upgrade. This is a generational step forward in upscaling quality and efficiency. Now here's the catch, and this part matters. PSSR2 uses a brand new API. That means devs can't just flip a switch and boom, magically better visuals. Each game will need its own dedicated patch to properly support it. So some games will benefit fast, some later, and some might never get updated depending on the studio. But with the way this tech is being described, it sure sounds like that's the goal. PSSR2 is also being developed alongside FSR3 and FSR4 in Sony's collaboration with AMD, so this isn't a one-off experiment. This is part of a long-term strategy. There's no exact release date yet, just sometime in 2026. But if this info holds up, a lot of PS5 Pro games are about to get a second visual glow-up next year. Faster processing, lower memory strain, better image quality. That's a nasty combo. So let me ask you this. If PSSR2 really delivers what's being promised here, does the PS5 Pro suddenly look way more future-proof than people gave it credit for? So this is actually pretty wild. Sony has allegedly been quietly tweaking the DualSense controller behind the scenes to make it last way longer during play sessions. A Polish console modder and controller tech basically tore down the newest PS5 pad model, the CFI-ZCT2W, and found a bunch of internal optimizations. We're talking about smarter electronics, the removal of the second microphone, and just overall more efficient engineering. And according to his testing, this new version can hit over 15 hours of continuous gameplay with adaptive triggers and haptics turned on. That's a big deal if you're someone who constantly lives on low battery warnings, like I do. He's saying this didn't happen overnight either. This is supposedly the result of 5 years of gradual hardware optimization, going from the early BDM 010 models all the way to BDM 060. Same 1,560 milliamp hour battery, but now it's being used way more efficiently. Less wasted power, cooler charging temps, and overall better performance. That part alone tells you Sony has been quietly refining this thing instead of loudly marketing it. Now, obviously, none of us have stress tested these new pads ourselves yet, so take it with a little grain of salt. But if this holds up in real-world use, that's actually huge. And if you're planning to buy a new DualSense or even a new PS5, you'll want to look for the product code CFI-ZCT2W on the box to make sure you're getting the optimized model. Even the new limited edition controllers, like the Genshin Impact one, should already be using this updated hardware. And yeah, earlier this year, there were some rumors floating around about a removable battery version of the DualSense, but that still feels pretty up in the air. What does make total sense, though, is Sony continuing to tweak and optimize their hardware quietly every generation. Sometimes it's about performance, sometimes it's about cutting costs, and most of the time, it's both. Low-key, though, if this really means fewer controller deaths mid-session, that alone is a massive win. Alright, so this next one is actually sneaky in the best way possible. Sony might already be training the entire PlayStation ecosystem for a handheld, and they're doing it right under everyone's nose using the PS5's low power mode. Yeah, not a new console announcement, not a flashy reveal, just a quiet little switch inside DevTools that suddenly makes a lot more sense. So here's what's going on. Over the last few months, we've been hearing more and more about Sony's next-gen plans. A full-blown PlayStation 6 home console, reportedly codenamed Orion, and a native handheld, codenamed Canis, both supposedly built on AMD Zen 6 CPUs with RDNA 5 graphics. We've heard about dockplay like the Switch, strong ray tracing, even a cheaper PS6S type system based on the handheld chip, full PS4 and PS5 compatibility, a 3nm APU, USB-C out to a TV, the whole dream setup. And now this new leak kind of ties all of that together in a really clever way. According to Moore's Law is Dead, a developer working with Sony tools says Sony has been actively emailing studios and pushing them hard to support PS5's low power mode directly, not just as a basic power saving toggle, but as a full performance target. And this part is important. Sony is not telling devs to drop games to 30 frames per second. They're telling them to keep 60 frames per second and instead lower resolution and reduce CPU usage until the game fits inside the low power budget. That's a huge clue. They're even giving studios walkthroughs for Razer CPU, which is Sony's internal CPU profiling tool, to hunt down heavy threads, reduce background tasks, and basically make games leaner at a system level. The dev quote straight up says it's becoming glaringly obvious that low power mode is a Trojan horse for getting PS6 handheld support ready before launch. And apparently Sony is a little annoyed more devs aren't fully supporting it yet. That tells you this is not optional long-term. Now think about this logically. On PS5 right now, developers effectively get about 6 or 7 Zen 2 cores for gameplay once the system takes its share. On the rumored PS6 handheld, the setup is said to be 4 Zen 6C performance cores for games, plus 2 smaller cores just for the OS. So even with fewer cores, those 4 would actually be much stronger than what devs are using today, but only if the games are optimized properly and not bloated with wasteful CPU behavior. And that's exactly what low power mode is forcing devs to deal with right now. So from Moore's Law is Dead's perspective, this does not look like a green feature. This looks like a hidden compatibility profile for a future handheld. Sony quietly future-proofing thousands of PS5 games so that when the PS6 handheld drops, stuff just works. No chaos, no massive patch rush, no broken ports. It's actually kind of genius. So, first up, CD Projekt is still dead serious about this whole Witcher master plan. Witcher 4, 5, and 6, all within a 6-year window. Yeah, that is still the goal. They confirmed it again during a recent financial call. The co-CEO straight up said they want shorter development gaps between each game this time. And the big reason they're confident, Unreal Engine 5. They've already been using UE5 on Witcher 4 for almost 4 years now, and they're apparently really happy with where it's at. They figured out how to make it work for massive open worlds, and that's what's giving them the confidence to speed things up. But let's slow down for a second and be realistic. Witcher 3 came out in 2015. Cyberpunk was their last full release, and that was 5 years ago. AAA development takes forever now. Elder Scrolls 6 was announced in 2018, and we still barely know what it is. Fable was announced in 2020, and it's not landing until 2026. Even Sony had a 5-year gap between Ghost of Tsushima and Yote. So the idea of 3 huge Witcher games in 6 years, that's insanely ambitious. Possible, but ambitious. Right now, CD Projekt has already said Witcher 4 is not coming in 2026. So realistically, we're looking at 2027 at the earliest. That would line Witcher 5 up around 2030 and Witcher 6 around 2033 if everything stays on track. Big if. Unreal Engine 5 might help, but this is still one of the most aggressive trilogy schedules we've ever seen. Now, switching gears, tiny GTA 6 leak. And when I say tiny, I mean microscopic. Some work in progress animation footage briefly appeared on Vimeo from a dev who's worked on Rockstar projects before it got nuked. 3 short clips leaked out. One showed a guy pulling a bike out of a rental rack with the word Lime Bike on it, which is very obviously Rockstar's parody of Lime Bikes. We already saw bike rentals in an official screenshot earlier this year, so that checks out. The other 2 clips just show Lucia getting out of the back of a pickup truck in a few different animation passes. That's it. No story spoilers, no map reveals, no wild new systems, just basic animation work. And honestly, none of this tells us anything we didn't already expect. Yes, you can rent bikes. Yes, you can hop out of trucks. Groundbreaking stuff, I know. GTA 6 is still locked for November 19th, 2026. Less than a year to go. These clips are interesting from a dev nerd perspective, but from a gameplay hype perspective, this was about as dry as a leak can get. And finally, yes, Hitman 4 is happening. It's just not happening soon. IO Interactive confirmed it again while talking about their James Bond game, 007 First Light. The CEO basically said, of course there will be another Hitman, but right now their focus is finishing up Hitman co-op inside World of Assassination. Once they're on the other side of that, then the conversation about the next full Hitman game really starts. Which makes sense. The Hitman franchise has been running since 2000, Silent Assassin in 2002, Blood Money in 2006, Absolution in 2012, then the World of Assassination trilogy from 2016 to 2021. They've been incredibly consistent. They're not killing the series. They're just spacing it out because they're juggling a lot right now. IO currently has 3 big projects. Ongoing support for Hitman World of Assassination, 007 First Light, which is due out March 27th next year. And then their new fantasy multiplayer IP, Project Fantasy, which is something totally different for them. No suits, no guns, full fantasy. High risk, but I actually love that they're trying something new. So yeah, Witcher trilogy on a speed run. GTA 6 leaks that barely qualify as leaks. And Hitman 4 confirmed, just waiting in the shadows. Alright, next up, this one's big for Assassin's Creed fans. According to a fresh report, Ubisoft's long-rumored Assassin's Creed Black Flag Remake is now expected to launch in just a few months, with Insider Gaming claiming the release window is the week of March 23rd, 2026. Ubisoft still hasn't officially confirmed the remake's existence, but during its latest financial call, the company listed one major unannounced game scheduled before the end of its current financial year on March 31st, 2026. Insider sources are now saying that mystery title is Black Flag. And let's be real, this has been the worst kept secret in the industry for years. Between internal leaks, fan tracking, and even hints from the original lead actor, players have known this remake was coming for a long time. Ubisoft just hasn't pulled the curtain back on it yet. The remake is expected to feature major visual and gameplay upgrades to bring it closer to the modern Assassin's Creed formula, similar to what we've seen with Shadows. There are also reports of brand new content and missions for Edward Kenway, which is huge for fans of the original. But there's also a controversial change. The modern-day gameplay sections are reportedly being removed entirely. And yeah, that's already dividing the fan base. Development is believed to be led by Ubisoft Singapore, the same studio behind Skull and Bones, which originally started as a Black Flag naval spin-off. So the naval side of this remake is expected to be a major focus. Ubisoft is clearly doubling down on Assassin's Creed as its core franchise. This year gave us Assassin's Creed Shadows. Mirage recently received a Saudi-funded free update. Next year brings the Black Flag remake and a second major Shadows expansion. On top of that, Ubisoft already has a multiplayer Assassin's Creed in development and the darker, witchcraft-themed Assassin's Creed Hex on the way as its next big blockbuster. During the same financial report, Ubisoft confirmed that Assassin's Creed Mirage has now passed 10 million sales and that the franchise as a whole is a major driver behind its recent positive financial performance. Interestingly though, Ubisoft did not share updated sales numbers for Shadows. So if this report is accurate, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Remake is landing March 20th, 26, and Ubisoft is about to stack multiple Assassin's Creed releases back-to-back in a very aggressive push. Now here's the real question. Are you actually excited for a Black Flag remake, or are you burned out on Assassin's Creed at this point? So Zephyrus tweeted out that Ubisoft Bordeaux, the same studio that just handled the Mirage DLC update, is now working on a brand new, unannounced project. This came straight from a developer's LinkedIn profile. And of course, it's always a junior dev, and it's always LinkedIn, every time. Now here's where it gets spicy. This project is being linked to the rumored Assassin's Creed codename Stardust, which a lot of people believe is the full AC1 remake. The rumor is that it could launch in 2027 for the franchise's 20th anniversary. And according to this profile, they've already been working on it for about 2 months. So yeah, this thing might actually be real and quietly in production right now. What also makes this weird is the studio structure. Ubisoft Bordeaux is not part of Vantage Studios, which is the big internal group handling major IP like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry through studios like Montreal and Quebec. Bordeaux technically sits outside of that structure, yet they're still working on Assassin's Creed content. So it almost feels like Ubisoft licensed its own IP internally, then handed it back down to another studio. It's messy. It's confusing. Classic Ubisoft corporate spaghetti. Now, the most encouraging part of all this is actually tied to the Mirage DLC they just finished, Valley of Memory. That update reportedly brought back a heavy use of motion capture, which is something Shadows barely used at all. And let's be honest, the lack of mocap in Shadows showed. The animations felt stiff, robotic, and honestly pretty dated in places. But in this new DLC, the mocap work looks way better. More natural movement, better performance capture. And that alone gives a little bit of hope for what's coming next. Because if this Stardust project really is the AC1 remake, and they lean back into proper motion capture, that could be a massive upgrade over what we've been seeing lately. And I'm just gonna say it, if they don't use proper mocap for Hexy, I'm gonna lose my mind. Those stiff, static robot animations, I just can't anymore. So yeah, Ubisoft Bordeaux is quietly cooking something. All signs point to AC1 remake, 2 months into dev, 2027 target, and motion capture is finally coming back into the picture. Keep your eye on this one. A lot of you have been asking about this Godslayer game that just got shown off, so let's talk about it. First of all, yeah, it looks really, really good. Like, visually, it's definitely eye-catching. But here's the wild part. This is coming from the same team that previously worked on My Time at Porsche and Let's School. I would have never guessed this would be their next project, so props for ambition right out of the gate. That said, I'm gonna need to see this thing running live. I'm gonna need a real demo. Because while the trailer looks cool, there are a few movement things that feel off. The motion feels slightly staggered, like there's input lag baked into the animation. It's subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now, to be fair, the actual systems on display are really interesting. You're breaking roof tiles with abilities. You knock over a water tower, the water floods the street, enemies get pushed by the current, then you freeze the water and turn everything into ice. That interlocking systems design is genuinely cool. One system feeds into another. I love that kind of gameplay design, and clearly a lot of other people do too, because this trailer already hit around 2.2 million views. People are feeling this concept. There are still signs of clunkiness though. The running speed looks weird in places. Sometimes it feels like the character is moving underwater on dry land. The frame rate dips in a few spots. Again, that stuff can be polished. That's not the hard part. The hard part is having a compelling idea in the first place, and here, the idea is actually solid. Then, it hits you with the mech moment out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, it's also a mech game now. Okay, that escalated quickly. Now, on the cinematic side, this game is clearly heavily scripted in the footage they're showing, and that's fine. That's how trailers work. You show the biggest, flashiest moments. That's how you get millions of views. But the real question with games like this is always the same. What's the connective tissue? What are you doing between these insane moments? With Godslayer, it feels like they're showing us constant high-intensity spectacle, and that's cool, but nobody wants 15 straight hours of non-stop cinematic chaos. You need quiet moments. You need exploration. You need systems that breathe in between the explosions. So the real questions right now are things like, is there a leveling system? Is there exploration? Are there puzzles? How does progression work? What breaks up these massive set-piece moments? Because as impressive as this all looks, what happens between the cool clips is what's going to make or break this game. So yeah, visually impressive. Systems are promising. The concept is strong, but it definitely looks a bit rough around the edges right now. The animations need work. The movement needs to feel tighter. It has that give it 12 more months in the oven energy. That whole Ubisoft no mocap vibe, where things just feel a little stiff. We've seen this before though. Blood of Dawn Walker also looked rough when it was first revealed, and the latest gameplay trailers show massive improvements in visuals and animation quality. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. It has real potential if they put in the polish.